Hey, have you ever noticed how your voice sounds totally different depending on where you are? Like in your bedroom versus in a big empty hall? Well, today we're going to dive into the science behind exactly that. Why every single room has its own unique sound, right? I mean, think about it. A huge cathedral can make music sound absolutely epic, just otherworldly. But singing in the shower? Well, that just gives you that classic boomy echo. So, what is the deal? The answer is all about how sound behaves in a space, and it's kind of like the secret language of architecture and audio. So, let's get into it. This unique character, this distinct sound that every room has, is what the pros call its sonic fingerprint. And believe me, understanding this fingerprint is the key to unlocking the whole field of architectural acoustics. Okay, so picture this. When you make a sound, it doesn't just go from your mouth to your ears and then disappear. Nope, it explodes outwards in all directions, bouncing off the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everything. It's like throwing 1,000 tiny super balls in a room all at once. That huge mess of lingering, reflected sound is what we call reverberation. And all that bouncing leads to two basic kinds of rooms. You've got your live rooms, full of hard stuff like glass and concrete, where sound bounces around forever. And then you have dead rooms, with soft things like carpets or acoustic panels that just soak up the sound right away. And here's the crucial part. Neither one is inherently good or bad. It all depends on what you're trying to do in that room. Now, here's what's really fascinating. This isn't just a vibe or a feeling you get. We don't have to guess. Engineers have figured out a super precise way to actually measure this sonic fingerprint and put a number on it. And that number is called RT60, which stands for reverberation time. It's the standard metric for this stuff, and the definition is actually pretty simple. It's just the time it takes for a sound to fade away until it's gone, specifically to drop by 60 decibels, which is just a unit for loudness. So you might be wondering, why 60 decibels? That sounds kind of random, right? Well, it turns out that number wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It actually has its roots in, of all places, classical music. Yeah, that's right. The 60 decibel range was picked because it almost perfectly matches the journey of sound in a real concert hall. Think about it. From the absolute loudest blast of a full orchestra, all the way down until that sound completely disappears into the quiet rustle of the audience. So it's a super practical, real-world measurement. Okay, so we've got this great metric, but how you actually measure it? It's not quite as simple as just clapping your hands and hitting a stopwatch. In the real world, things get, well, a little more complicated. And here is the central challenge. To measure a 60 decibel drop, you first need to make a sound that is at least 60 decibels louder than the normal background noise in the room. And trust me, that is a huge, huge problem. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, in a normal office, you've got this background hum of maybe 45 decibels from the AC and computers. To get a clean measurement there, you'd need to create a sound of 105 decibels. That is as loud as being in the front row of a rock concert. Not exactly practical or safe, for that matter. So, what did the acousticians do? They got clever. They came up with a brilliant workaround: extrapolation. Basically, instead of trying to measure that entire massive 60 dB drop, they just measure a smaller, cleaner piece of the decay at the very beginning. And then they just calculate the rest. And this is where something called the T20 or T30 method comes in. It's actually pretty straightforward. First, you make a loud, sharp sound, like a pop. Then, you just measure how long it takes for that sound to drop by the first 20 or 30 decibels. And the last step is just simple math. If you measure the T20 time, you multiply it by 3. If you use the T30 time, you multiply it by 2. Either way, you get a really accurate RT60 value. It's just a super elegant solution to a very noisy problem. Now, for a quick and dirty test on the fly, engineers will often just use simple, sharp sounds. A loud hand clap, popping a balloon, or even a starter pistol. These are great for just getting a rough ballpark idea of a room's sound without having to haul around a bunch of heavy equipment. But of course, these simple tools have their limits. A hand clap is free, sure, but it's pretty weak and inconsistent. A balloon is better, but it still doesn't have a lot of that low-frequency bass energy. So, for real scientific-grade results, the pros use what's called a dodecahedron speaker. It's this awesome 12-sided speaker that blasts sound out perfectly evenly in all directions. It gives you repeatable, super accurate data every single time. Okay, so this is where it all comes together. Once you can accurately measure a room's RT60, you can finally stop guessing. you can actually start designing spaces to have the perfect sound for whatever they're going to be used for. And listen, if you only take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. There is no single good RT60. It is all about the room's purpose. For a podcast recording booth, you want it super dead, like under 0.3 seconds, so every word is crystal clear. But for a concert hall, you need a much longer time, maybe around 2 seconds, to give the music that beautiful, rich, enveloping feel. And then you get to a giant cathedral, which might have an RT60 of 10 seconds or more to create that incredible sense of awe for organ music. This quote really just sums it all up perfectly. The core challenge, the fundamental trade-off, is always between clarity for things like speech and richness for things like music. You're always trying to find that perfect balance. All right, so final piece of the puzzle. What if your room's sound is just wrong for what you want to do? Let's say it's way too live, the RT60 is just too long. How do you actually fix it? Well, you've got two main tools in your acoustic toolkit. And those tools are absorption and diffusion. Absorption is easy to understand. It's basically a sponge for sound. It soaks up the sound energy, pulling it out of the room and making the RT60 shorter. Diffusion is different. It's more like a prism for sound. It doesn't get rid of the sound energy, it just scatters it in a bunch of different directions. This makes the echoes that are left sound way more natural and pleasant to the ear. And I'm willing to bet you've seen these tools all over the place. You know those soft fabric-covered panels on the walls of a movie theater? Those are absorbers. The big foam wedges in the corners of a recording studio? Those are bass traps, which are just specialized absorbers. But what about those cool-looking blocky wood panels with all the different depths? Those are diffusers, and they are built specifically to scatter sound. And that really brings us to the final goal here. Great acoustic design is not about making a room totally dead and silent. Honestly, those rooms just feel weird and uncomfortable. The real goal is to find the perfect balance, using just the right mix of absorption and diffusion to control the reflections and tune that RT60 so the room sounds absolutely perfect for its job. So I've got a little challenge for you. The next time you walk into a new space, could be your office, a coffee shop, a library, just stop for a second. Close your eyes and listen. Give a loud clap. What do you hear? Is it a long, lush reverb, or is it a short, tight, crisp sound? Now that you know the secret, you can start to hear the unique sonic fingerprint of every single room you're in.